Hey everyone, for our 15th class I gave you an extra assignment, an extra challenge if you will, to start building a real network with some cool software to play around with. So let's grab the lab assignment. It is in the lab PDF and it's called Lab Extra Work DVWA. So as I explained in the class, DVWA is the damn vulnerable web app and it is a learning tool for people who want to try their hand at pen testing. Now what you and I are going to do is we're going to set up two VMs to run DVWA instead of just one or a Docker container. I'm thinking, you know what? In real life we also run databases on different hosts, so we're going to build two virtual machines with one running Apache and the other one running MariaDB or MySQL. That's what we're going to do. And I don't expect you to do all of this outright in the Vagrant file. We're going to write it as we go. So we're going to build the basic VMs. And then we're going to figure out what needs to go into the post-install sections of the Vagrant files to make it work magically out of the box. And this is what we're going to end up building. We're going to make a NAT network with an extra port forward that points to a web server on the www host. And the web application, DVWA, speaks to a MariaDB or MySQL database on the other host. And as I said, we're going to take things nice and easy, right? Step by step, start building the VMs, make sure that they boot, make sure that they can talk to each other, and we'll take it from there. So the first step is, I did give you a starter file, a 015 Vagrant file. Start here, it's in our GitHub repository. It is also in our class files if you're over at ITVT. And yeah, sure, there's a spoiler file as well, but try to not take a peek at it too early. We're going to start just with the starter file and then use the documentation from DVWA and from MySQL or MariaDB to get things started. So first up, we're going to look at the Vagrant setup. I have got my terminal which got my Git repository cloned locally. I am in a directory called lesson 15. What I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to take a copy of, there we go, the Vagrant file start here. And I'm going to make a new directory called build for all I care, and that's where I'll put the file. And I will rename it to Vagrant file because that's what it's supposed to be called. Now, if we're going to inspect it with Subetha Edit or with it, whichever text editor you like, ooh, let me blow up that font a little bit. There's already a bit of stuff in here. You might have seen this before. At the top we've got provisioning scripts, one called MySQL script, and one called www script. And those will be used to do some extra actions after the VM has been built by Vagrant. And here's where the actual VMs get defined. We do two config loops. One of them is called config VM define MySQL, and the other one is config VM define www. They're very similar, but they have a few different details. So the MySQL host, it's going to skip guest OS updates because I don't want to waste time on that. The host name is going to be mysql.hexercarp, and I've got it set up as the .11 host. It'll get 1 core, it'll get a gig of RAM, maybe a bit too much, but we'll see. And yes, in provisioning, it'll run the MySQL script over here. For www, we disable auto updates as well. We set the host name to www.hexer.corp. The IP address is going to be .12. And this one already has the port forward set up. You're welcome. Oh, and it gets 512 megs of RAM, 1 core, and the www script. So what do the post-install scripts do? Right now, not a darn lot. They set up a shared Vagrant directory, they set up etc hosts to have both names in there and IP addresses, and that is it. The rest is for you to cook up. So I am over here. Let's see what we're going to do. I am going to hop into lesson 15. And remember, I made the build directory. So I've got a Vagrant file. If I do Vagrant up, hopefully it'll start building. Alright, there we go. So that's 2 VMs up and running, I think. Let's go see. I will open up a second tab so we can go to both hosts at the same time. I can do Vagrant SSH www, and hopefully that pops me into the web server. Yep, there we go. My host name is www.hexer.corp, and if I open up a second tab, I can do Vagrant SSH MySQL, because that's the other host. Alright, and this is MySQL. Cool. Let's see if we can ping each other. Can I ping the www host? I most certainly can. And can I ping the MySQL host from the web server? Let's see. Yeah, that works. So at least we've got some basic networking. Let's see. Can we SSH from my www to MySQL? That would be interesting. Looks like it, but permission denied. Okay. And can I SSH to www? Also permission denied. That's pretty cool. Later on we'll figure out what that is about. Let's see, do we have netcat? Oh. We do not. So if we want to test some more with network functionality, maybe we should better install it. So that would be a sudo yum install -i netcat, and let's do that on both hosts. And you know what? This is one of the very first things that we can start adding to our Vagrant file. So while that is running, let's do so. Fill in the rest here. I will do a sudo yum install -y netcat on both of them, because that'll help in troubleshooting. Cool. Yep, both of them are done. Now probably if I were to open up a listener, this would I would not be able to connect to either of the hosts because there's probably a firewall in the way. So let's remember, what were the commands over here again? You'd think it was firewall cmd status or something, right? Ah, it was -- state. Right, and of course you need to sudo. Yep, it's running and probably enabled. Cool. Right, so we do have some basic network functionality. What else did the lab instructions tell us to do? Well, running CentOS 7, which is what the starter file did, and we have some basic networking working. Now one of them they say, you know, please install MariaDB or MySQL. And the other one will need Apache and probably some other commands as well, like git and a few other packages. So let's see. First up, for the web server, let's do sudo yum install -y httpd. I think that was the package for Apache, and we also want git. Yep, that seems to be okay. So while that is running, let's add that to the post install script. I don't just want netcat, but I also want httpd and git. Cool. That seems to be done. So let's see, systemctl enable httpd, and I use my Vagrant password. Access denied. Sudo -l. I can do a lot. Sudo systemctl enable httpd. Ah, there we go. It worked. And we can do start. That also works. Sudo systemctl status httpd There we go, it seems to be running. Let's see if we can curl locally. HTTP localhost. Sure, there's a Red Hat page. Standard stuff. So locally it works. Let's see if it works from MySQL. Probably not, because there's a firewall in the way. Let's do curl http /www/ yeah, index.html. Why not? Yeah, that's not working, because there's a firewall rule in the way. So let's remember from our class notes from last time, how would we do or add that particular firewall rule? Well, you know what? You and I, all of us, we have the same slides. So let's go and see, right? Because this is how you would probably also look it up. Firewall CMD, that's UFW, here is firewall D. So last time we saw we need to install a few things, and then we say firewall CMD state and get active zones. And then we can say set default zone public, because well, why not? Sudo firewall CMD set default zone. Forgetting a few dashes. Public. There we go. And we might as well actually, oh, it says zone already set, but you know what? We might as well add that to the Vagrant file as well, just for safe measure. Then we can say, where did we go? There we go. Sudo firewall cmd add service http, and then we're going to add it to the zone public. So just like we saw last time, zone equals public. We've got firewall cmd add service http zone public -- permanent. That worked. So if I add that to the Vagrant file as well, we've got that saved. Hopefully, oh, of course we need to reload the firewall. Cool. So with any luck from MySQL, we can now reach it. Oh yeah, there we go. We've got a website. And we can reach it from MySQL, meaning that hopefully I can also reach it from my local host, because we've got, as in from my host OS, because we did set up the port forward, right? I can do curl, I'm back on my Mac here, curl http localhost port 8080, because that is what the port forward set up. Yeah, there we go. Goal 1 achieved. We have an open firewall, we have a web server with a basic website running. Awesome. So what other things that the lab instructions suggest we do? Whoops. Okay, so we've got a Vagrant and we've got software. The other one should install Apache, and ooh, we need some extra packages from DVWA. So let's, I guess we can get to that later, and we did set up the port forward. The other one, we probably needed to install MariaDB or MySQL, so let's go and have a look on the database host. Yum search MariaDB. Is it on here? Sure, there we go. And now we get to pick a few things, because do we need a MariaDB client or a server or something else? See, that's an interesting one. I reckon that on the web server we need MariaDB server, and on the on the web server we need MariaDB, and on the web database server you need MariaDB server. So let's go. Sudo yum install -y MariaDB server on the MySQL box, and let's add that to the Vagrant file as well. And on the web server, let's also install the MariaDB client. So while that is running, sudo yum install -i MariaDB. Because otherwise the web server won't be able to speak to the database. Cool. Well, that's already something. So we now have a Vagrant file, which if we were to destroy the VMs, it will rebuild the VMs to the state that they're in right now. They have working networking, one will have a MariaDB server software installed, the other one will have a web server installed with a few extra tools. Now I'm willing to bet that we will need to set up the firewall for MariaDB as well. So I'm just copying and pasting the commands from the web server, and now the only thing that we need to figure out is which service name do we need to add on their side. So first up, we did this. Sudo systemctl enable httpd, and we did it start. That is part of the provisioning script. And over here we will do the same thing, but for MariaDB. Assuming that that's the name of the service. We're going to find out. So I'm going to hop back to the database server, that's where I am. Sudo systemctl enable MariaDB. Yep, so that was the name of the service, that's cool. What would be even cooler is if the firewall service had the exact same name. So let's quickly whip up the default zone, set it to public. Yep, that was done. Let's see. Is the service for MariaDB actually called MariaDB, or is it MySQL? Yep, it's not MariaDB. So let's see, could it be MySQL? It is, so there we go. I have changed the line in the Vagrant file, and now let's open up the firewall. Pardon me. There we go. Let's see, what else does our file tell us, the lab files? So we've installed MariaDB, we've started it up, enabled it, same for the Apache, and we've actually even opened up the firewall as well. So step 2 was saying, hey, do we have basic networking? Well, we've confirmed a few things already because they were booted and we've logged in and we can ping. Now, we couldn't SSH, well, we could SSH, but we couldn't log in. And also, Netcat wouldn't work on random mass ports because we've got a firewall. But generally speaking, we saw that our hosts can communicate, especially since the MySQL box could load the web page from the web server. Right, so some extra checks for MySQL or MariaDB. We did install it, so that's good. And let's see if the software started. Why not? Systemctl status, MariaDB. Yeah, let's see, that looks okay. Yep, cool. Oh, I can go and close the firewall hints. Let's see, they actually link to a getting started guide. Let's go see what they say. Alright, here's MySQL's getting started page. Let's see if there's something to test. Installing, starting, we've done that. Let's go see if we can actually connect locally. Is there anything interesting to see over here that we can learn? There we go. Connect locally. Huh. MySQL -u root -p for a localhost connection after a completely default install. Alright, let's go see. MySQL -u root -p. Well, that was easy. We have connected to a local host, and it seems that it works. Cool. We have a web server running Apache. We have MySQL running, but it's not doing much just yet. But theoretically, what we could do is this. Let's go test what we've made so far. If I run Vagrant destroy, it'll start tearing down the virtual machines that we made. Of course, it'll keep the downloaded file, the image file that we have, but looking at the Vagrant file that we have right now, we already have a lot of provisioning going on. We have our setup, we have Netcat MariaDB, setup of MariaDB, we've got the firewall, and there we go. And for the web server, we've got the same setup that we already had. We've got Netcat, Git, HTTP, MariaDB, the client, some firewall stuff. Cool. So let's go see what happens if we destroy the virtual machines and then try to rebuild them. Alright, that looks like it did something. Hopefully, we should now again have two virtual machines, one running HTTPD, and with some luck I can actually go and grab the page via here. Nope. Curl localhost 8080. There we go. So the port forward works, Apache is up and running, I've got the base page. Yep, that's nice. And if I vagrant SSH into the www thing, and I vagrant SSH into MySQL as well, hopefully over here I can do the local connection to MySQL again. And then we can continue our setup. So can I do MySQL -u root? Yep, that was fast. Cool. And over here we've got a login. Can I, on the MySQL box, do a curl for http://www index.html? Well, I can talk to it. It doesn't work because I'm grabbing a file that doesn't exist. So how's this? There we go. Right, networking works. We've got a web server up and running. So next steps. We want to start installing DVWA and the requirements and the dependencies for it, and we need to set up MySQL. So let's go take a look at the DVWA project page on GitHub over here. So scrolling down the README, they've got some warnings and don't run this in a dangerous place or something like that. We've got downloads. Oh, this is handy. So they're offering a zip file or a Git repository. Well, since we installed Git, we might as well clone it into, well, first let's see what happens if we clone it into the home directory of Vagrant on that VM. We can always move it later. Git clone, oh, that's double. Git clone, boom. And it's moving all the stuff into a directory called DVWA. Alright, and if we go into DVWA, there we go. There is all kinds of stuff. There's a PHP any, there's the index.php. So basically this is literally the set of files needed to run the web app. So what we could do is move all of this into var www html. There we go. Right now that's empty. What's one directory up? There's that. Yeah. Well, let's see. What happens if we do that? I can sudo move star into var www html. What does that leave us with? There's a git, github, git ignore. Those are not very interesting. Var www html ls-al. So all of these now belong to the user Vagrant, while I was actually hoping to make them root. So we could do a sudo change on -r root for the directory, and that'll grab all the files and the directories in here and make them root. Alright, and they're only writable by the user root, which is kind of safe in this setup, but they're legible to just about everything over here as well. Cool. Does that mean this works right from the get-go? Probably no. So let's see, what kind of instructions do they have? Please make sure that your config inc php file exists, only having config So we're going to have to do a PHP configuration in a little bit. Alright, we will. Then over here it says Windows and XAMPP, that's not applicable to us. Linux. If you're using a Debian-based Linux, you will need to install Apache, MariaDB, PHP, MySQLi. Right. Okay, so we don't have Debian, but we probably need to look into grabbing these dependencies anyway. Let's go and see. And they also say it will work with MySQL, but they recommend MariaDB. All right, cool. First up though, let's see what happens if we do this. Sudo yum install -y. Let's just see if all those names actually just map over. They installed PHP, PHPGD, and PHP MySQL, and the one missing is libapache mod PHP. So in this case, you know what? I might as well Google. We're running CentOS, and we want to have that one. What's that name? I have a playbook that runs blah blah. Okay, that sounds okay. That's all apt. Okay, let's quickly see what they say. And otherwise we'll just yum search for it. Alright, there is no holy grail just to do this. Okay. Well, we'll just do what they're suggesting, and hey, yum search for libapache. And no, you're right, I don't need to do sudo for a yum search. Okay, they didn't find that. Interesting. Who knows, maybe it'll actually just work. Maybe it does. So we've installed PHP and the requisite modules. We could do a systemctl restart httpd and see what happens. Curl http localhost. Ooh, nothing. Index.php. Nothing. That is interesting. Let's see what happens if I do it in this thing. http localhost 8080. Ooh, something is happening, but not really. An error 500, right, that means an application error. We can go and figure that out. So maybe we can find out if there's any messages about what is going wrong. Let's see. Apache does have a log directory of its own. We can't get into it. Cool. Let's see, there's an access log and an error log. Sudo tail -f httpd error log. It says PHP fatal error, failed opening required index PHP. And more warnings, failed to open stream, permission denied. That is interesting, because we did kind of set up the permissions, right, didn't we? So, yep, they're readable, they're legible, so that should work. What could we be missing? Well, remember that this is CentOS, so we might need to tweak SELinux. Let's see, SE status. It is enabled, it is enforcing. So let's see what happens if we temporarily set it to permissive. So set enforce 0, and let's make it a sudo. Maybe do a restart, just to be safe. Let's see, does it load now? Sure, yeah, there we go. So there is something with SELinux that we need to tweak. And obviously we still need to configure DVWA itself. But yes, this is clear that we need to fix some SELinux settings. So let's turn SELinux back on. And let's see about the context of this directory and its files. So ls-alz adlz dot. So here the context is httpd syscontent t. And if I do an ls-alz for all the files, we see they're still user home. That's because we copied them from my home directory. And that's something we need to fix. So we need to figure out again how to use SEmanage, or another way, to set the context of a directory and all the files in it. So back to the Googles, because yeah, of course I don't remember that stuff from the top of my head either. SELinux set file context. Change context of a file or directory. Right, that's check on for change context. There we go. Create new file, copy file, temporarily change context. We've got change con -t, but that means temporarily. And if it's rebooted or if restore con command is used, it says over here, then the file or directory will return to its original content. Now restore con implies that we can just use that to fix the permissions on this directory. So let's first up try this. Sudo chkon, and then was it -t, the type star. So that's all done, but it didn't do it recursively. So let's see if we can do chkon -r for recursively. Yeah, hopefully that worked. So if I now try to reload the page, does it work? Oh, it's better. It's better. So now the question is, if we reboot it, how are things going to go by then? Let's see about restorecon. Or maybe that's actually on this page as well. So restorecon command can be used to permanently restore a file or directory. Cool, why not? They have a direct link. How awesome is that? Oh, and it is literally just restorecon -v for some extra stuff. Okay, so we are in var www HTML. Sudo restorecon -v var www HTML start. And do we have a recursive on that as well? Man restorecon. Looks like we do. There's a big fat -r on there. Yeah, recursively. Cool. Let's try. There we go. It changed a few more things. Sweet. So we need to remember, what did we change, because we need to put all of this stuff into our Vagrant file. So let's see, history -20. What did we do? Oh, history, just do it like this. Cool. So we did a chkon. Where's the git? Because I think that's where we started with. Cool. The git clone is something we want in our Vagrant file. Let's see. This is the post install for the web server. And we might as well do it right before we open up the firewall. So I can go cd tilde and say git clone, and it'll grab the git repository. Then we can do a cd dvwa, and we could do sudo move star into var www HTML. That's what we did. See, there we go. And I could do a sudo change on -r root var www HTML. And we could do sudo restore con -r for www.html as well. See, that's something already. So now we have the basic website in there, and the files are set up correctly for SELinux. And yeah, that should work. And you know what? Let's move the start and the enable below it as well, because there we go. Cool, that's something. Next up, we probably need a configuration file. That's what the website over here was yelling at us for. It said, dude, I do not have a configuration file. So let's go back to the DVWA page, because next up we've done the packages, or at least most of them. But they do have an entry saying database setup. So to set up the database, simply click on setup, blah, blah, blah. But there is a config file, and they want to have that somewhere. If you receive an error while trying to create your database, make sure your database credentials. So there is a file apparently that we need to configure all this stuff in. Oh, and we do need to set up a database as well, but that will follow a bit later. Let's go and explore that server and see what we have. We have a directory called config, and we have a php.ini file. So let's see what's in config. Cool, there is a configuration file over here, and where did they want it to go? I can't find config file. Copy config inc php dist to config inc php. Alright, and then configure. We can do that. So copy config into config inc php. And you know what? We might just want to end up making this file into something that we include with our Vagrant file as a package. But first let's make sure it works. So vi of config.inc.php. Let's see, dbms, MySQL. Sure, it is. And we've got some variables that we want to set up. Now the DB server, that's different, because that is not localhost. Ah, careful, VI is telling me it's a read-only file. Forgot to do sudo. So we have server. We're going to change that because the host name is mysql.haxer.corp. The database we're just going to call DVWA, dbuser DVWA, and password. Well, we could make it password, or I'll make it something else, but that's perfectly okay for now. That is actually the most important one right now. Maybe we need to tweak stuff later. But okay, so we have a file that is now set up. And let's not forget to figure out how to do it with the Vagrant file later on. But in order to make it really work, we need to do a few steps inside MariaDB. It says if you're using MariaDB, then you can't use the database root user, you must create a new database user. That's exactly what we're going to be doing. So to do this, connect to the database as the root user and use the following commands. Create database DVWA. We're going to do that. I am going to zip over to the database server and run mysql -uroot, and here we are. So first step was create database. Okay, that was done. Then it says create user DVWA at localhost identified by password. Okay, so this is where things are going to get a bit interesting, because I made a little note in our slides. Because it says, when setting up the MySQL database, do not use at localhost. Use at %. So that makes it a networkable account. I'm going to change this, and I'm going to replace localhost with %. There we go. Because otherwise it would only be able to connect locally. So grant all on DVWA to DVWA at, and then we're going to have to put that % in there again. Yep, that worked. And alright, flush privileges. Why not? Now, theoretically, we can test whether this works. We could hop over to the Apache box and do this. MySQL -u DVWA -h mysql.hackserver.corp -p, and then we might need to add the database name, but first let's see. Enter a password. Well, that seems to have worked. There is, yep, MariaDB connection ID is 4, so we are actually already connected. So this proves that the database connection from the web server to the database host works, that the username and password are fine. Now that we have that database user set up and we've confirmed that it works, we would like to have it made immediately upon the installation through Vagrant. Now the nice part is that I know that you can use the MySQL command line tool to also run scripts. So what we could do is this. This is on the MariaDB side, and it says here we can start it. Well, obviously we need to have it started. So now that MariaDB is up and running and accessible, we could start doing something like this. MySQL -u root, that was for a local connection on the database server. You might remember how to run a here doc. There we go. We're just going to put the commands that we wanted to run inside MySQL in a here doc, and it'll get fed into the client and it'll do it all for us. How nice is that? So we need create database DVWA. We want the default password for now. I mean, later on you could definitely change that with something proper that gets generated and put into a variable. Right now we're just going to go for a proof of concept. So we now have a configured database, and right, we were messing with the configuration file because we need to put that into place as well. So let's cd into var.ww html/config, and over there we wanted to copy, what was the file called again? We wanted to copy this file into that file. And then we actually also wanted to make a configuration change, and we might as well do that with sed. You might remember that sed has an option to inline change a file. Let's go and see if we can't find out how to do this. So you know what we're going to do? For now, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go copy config.inc.php into /vagrant. Because that should probably mean I'm in my build directory right now. There we go. So we've saved the config.inc.php, and we could just, for now, instead of using the whole sed trick, I'm going to say, please do copy /vagrant config php into /. There we go, and then this line can go over here, and it's comments, and this is a fix me for later. Alright. Well, looks like we've got something cooking. Back to our website. Let's see if we forgot something. Other configuration. We might need to set up folder permissions. There's some extra stuff that they are telling us to do in case we want to do some extra exploits. Hackable uploads needs to be writable by the web service. So in this case we need to figure out which user account the web server runs as, and then fix some more permissions. So ps-ef grep-i httpd, They're all running as user Apache. So in this case, we might as well make the owner Apache and make sure they're, that's up for debate. We could make the whole uploads file world writable. That's kind of nasty, but hey, we're trying to simulate a very badly made website, right? So let's go cd hackable, and there we've got uploads. Oh, you know what? Why not? Sudo chmod o plus we for uploads. And let's put that in the Vagrant file as well. Sudo change mod o plus w var www html hackable uploads. That way, the directory is writable by the Apache user. We've got a log file that needs to be writable. All right, why not? That's an interesting one. If you wish to use PHP IDS, well, I don't know if we will, but you know what? Doesn't hurt. There we go, added that as well. And I'll just run it on the Linux VM itself. Oop, there we go. PHP config. There's some more settings that we could do to make it even less secure. We can do that, and then because we're saving the config file anyway, let's go do that. Oh, and they also want CAPTCHAs. All right, why not? Right, allow URL include allows for RFIs. Okay, we can do that. Allow. Was it allow? Yeah. Oh, that's PHP configuration, and that is in the PHP ini file. All right. So let's see if we have that. Right, there is a PHP ini file, so I could do PHP ini and edit it. We have allow URLf open on, URL include is on. We've got save mode off if we want it, but our PHP is newer than 5.4. That does not apply. Display errors. Okay, we don't need to touch this for now. Cool. And then we've got default credentials. Yep, there we go. So, with any luck, this could actually be it. Let's go see. Let's reload. All right, this is something. And it does mention that the URL include is disabled, so there is still a little bit of a mishap with that setting in PHP ini, so we can go fix that. The reCAPTCHAs, we knew we need to fix that. Hackable uploads is writable, correct, and is that file writable? It says no. Okay, so we have a few things to fix. Also, is the folder HTML config writable? No, well, we'll go fix this just to make sure that all of these things are lit up green like a Christmas tree, and then we know that this is an uber hackable thing. If you see disabled on either that one or that one, set the following in your PHP ini file. Well, I thought we already had that. Oh, and restart Apache. All right, we can do that later on. PHP, there we go. There we go. It's back in, right, sudo. There we go. Anything else they wanted in there? That, and then we might as well copy php.ini into /vagrant as well, and then make sure that we grab it as well. So we had a copy over here. Where is it? There we go. We had a copy of Vagrant php.ini into var www html. There we go. Now we're getting into ordering because I'm messing with the files after setting the SELinux context. So let's go to put that at the end. All right. Oddly, it mentioned that this file is not world writable. Let's go see. ls-al of that file. It is world writable. And what's the context like? It is in the right context, so maybe that's a fix me for later. We have that, we have that. Oh, and the writable file, this one. Ooh, they actually want the config file directory to be writable. Sudo change mod o plus w config. Sure thing, buddy. And let's put that over here as well. All right. Now that that is done, let's restart Apache. Let's see if any of the red items turned green. They in fact did not. That is annoying. We'll have to look into that later. Now, there is one step that remains, and we need to click this button that says Create Reset Database. And hopefully that would have started setting up the database, but it says could not connect to database service. Please check configuration file. I can't connect to MySQL on MySQL Hexer Corp. Okay, so it does have the right host name, and we know that it has the right settings because they're over here. Backend database, MySQL MariaDB, database username is DVWA with the password. So what could we be missing? Now this is CentOS, right? So what happens if we set enforce back to 0? Can we now do it? We might need to restart Apache just as a double check. I don't think we should or need to, but we're not running production. So reload the page. No changes here. Does it work if we click that button? Sure enough it does. So in this case, SELinux again got in our way. Let's go turn it back on and let's research. Is there something in SELinux that is blocking us? SELinux, Apache, MySQL, connect. How do I allow MySQL connections through SELinux? Lots of people would say, just turn off SELinux, but that's not how it works. I know for a fact that there is a Boolean that we need to switch, a true or false value. Let's go see. See, there we go. Server fault, Stack Overflow. If you're running under SELinux, make sure you disable SELinux. No, that's not what we want. There we go. Set SEBool. That is the one I was looking for. It means set a Boolean for SELinux. And this one that we want is HTTPD can connect to a network DB. That is something we need to do. And then that should work. So definitely make sure that we put this inside our Vagrant file before restarting Apache. And let's see, let's go back to the admin panel. I think it was admin and password. If we were to reset the database, because right now, SE status, it's enabled and enforcing. If I push that button that says create one more time, Originally this would have failed. And now it works, setup successful. So this is great stuff. We have a working DVWA. I mean, sure, there's a few small things to fix, like the reCAPTCHAs, but overall, we're here. So we could now again Vagrant destroy and Vagrant rebuild. And then hopefully that'll just give us that one single website that is running. Vagrant destroy. Right, they're both gone. And reloading the page should now definitely go like, yeah, there's nothing here. Perfect. Let's rebuild. That looks like it's it. Ooh, okay, something broke. The web page is serving stuff up, but it's not executing the PHP as if it's PHP. So yeah, there's something that we need to fix. Let's go see what happened. Oh, did I actually save the file? I did. Okay, luckily later on we can Vagrant provision again, see what happened. So let's scroll. This is the web server. And if we scroll around, we see that it installed a whole bunch of stuff. Then it did the git clone, and it did the firewall setup. Oh, hang on. Did we tell it to install? We did not. That's why. Yeah. I forgot to add the packages for PHP. We installed them with yum, but I didn't put them in the Vagrant file. Okay, let's go back to the DVWA project, and the dependencies, which I also deftly forgot, are these three. Let's see what happens. Sudo yum install -y those three. And this time I will definitely add them into the Vagrant provisioning file. Let's see if it works after this. Because it's serving up the file just fine, and we get to see the whole PHP file, but it should actually be executing it. Systemctl restart HTTPD. Will it work? Will it blend? There we go. That looks promising. Admin, password, and we need to go smash that setup button. There we go. Setup successful. Please log in. There we go. Okay, so I just missed those two little, or actually those three little packages, and now the Vagrant file is complete. And we can actually start hacking. It's been a long while in coming, but yep, it worked. We have made 2 VMs that are serving up DVWA with a database on a separate host. Thanks everyone. I hope this is going to be helpful for you. Vagrant destroy. Take care.